This is the last video lecture in this chapter, and this one we're going to start off talking about the motor skills of a child from newborn up to age 2. And infants must learn to locomote. Yes, that's what I said, locomote, which is the ability to move around in the world. And of course, they're going to uh, first move with their hands and their feet to move around, and then they have to learn their fine motor skills, the skills associated with grasping, holding, and manipulating objects at a later time. So in the first year, this will totally transform their world. By 5 months, and of course, let me just say this is a general idea. Every child will develop on their own time frame, and so, but if a child is not doing specific abilities uh, after an extended period of time, it would always cause concern. So by 5 months, they should be rolling back and forth. By 7 months, they should be sitting. By 10 months, they should be creeping. And by 14 months, they should be able to walk with assistance. This unsteady walking, and remember how we talked about toddlers being top heavy, their posture and their balance, they're top heavy. So that unsteady walking is called toddling, hence where the name toddler came from. Some cultures actually discourage walking because of danger and dirt. They don't want the child to be falling in the dirt. So they might start a few minutes later. They may spend more time strapped to the mom and not allowed on the floor. So as we said before, because they're top heavy, they have a difficult time with posture. And so what they have to do is use visual cues in inner ear mechanisms to help them with this balance. They actually have to continually readjust or relearn depending on each situation. So right there is a lot of focus and a lot of ability, because if you're always off balance and you're trying to take a few steps and you're trying to maneuver across the living room floor and avoid your toys, and this is a very difficult task, and so they're constantly having to be on the lookout and readjusting that posture and balance. As far as fine motor skills go, by 4 months, a child will be able to reach and grasp. We've all, us ladies who've had a necklace on and a child just grabs at it. They'll go for your necklace, your earrings, but they're very clumsy about it. And at about 7 or 8 months is when they add the thumb. Okay, initially they're not using that thumb, so they're going to add that thumb to grasping. And as I said, that's approximately 7 to 8 months old. At this same time, they start to position their hands. At 4 months, even though they're using both hands, it's like each hand has a mind of its own. And by 5 to 6 months, it gets more coordination. A 1 year old can actually scoop food into a spoon. You'll recall, when kids are little, and I wish I was seeing you in person so I could show you, when they have they're grasping that spoon and they're going for their mouth, but lots of times it ends up on their cheek, and they have this difficult time of aiming towards their mouth. And as time goes on, it gets better and better. By 2 years old, a child will be able to use their wrist like an adult. And by 2 to 3 years old, they can put clothes on, but they can't button. Okay, so they're going to use zippers at this time. And of course, shoes now have Velcro on them, so they don't, it's they can put on their own shoes. At 3 to 4 years old, they're able to handle buttons. By 5 years old, they can dress, undress, still not quite tie shoes. By 6 years old, they have the ability to tie shoes. A lot of you probably remember when you learned to tie your shoes. I even remember, and I'm 60 years old, I remember sitting in a room and having my mother, I probably was in kindergarten, help me to tie my shoes. And it actually was a really difficult task. I didn't get it very easily because I'm left-handed and she was right-handed, and it was a difficult thing. And I think I remember it because it was very frustrating. So um, young babies use either hand. Okay, speaking of handedness, they use either hand, and that handedness shows in preschool and is established by kindergarten. Here's another little story. Now, at my age, of course, this would never happen today, but I can remember I must have some traumatic memories. I remember being in first grade and I was up at the board and making letters, and I think I made a zero, but I did it in the opposite direction of what we were supposed to do. And I'm not making this up, but I actually got spanked right there on the spot because they were trying to make me right-handed, and I never became right-handed, but that was pretty scary to be paddled, and I was the type of kid that never ever got paddled, so that was really uh, another one of those memories. Memories, well, we'll talk about that later, but you might remember from intro that your first memories are about 3.5 to 4 years old, but sometimes our early memories are of more traumatic events, hence why I can really remember this being spanked thing. So let's talk about smell, taste, and touch. Children have a very keen sense of smell. It's one of the things that when they're born, they can smell the mom right away. They have a keen sense of smell. So if you put some rotten eggs in front of them, they'd make quite a face. If you watch babies when they taste things that are bitter or sour, they'll make quite the expression, but they really right away are attached to the mother through smell. As far as their taste goes, they have a sweet tooth. Babies love things that are sweet, and they're very sensitive to touch. They respond greatly to touch. Children that are not touched, they just, you can be fed. You remember Harlow's monkeys in intro? You can be uh, taken care of, but if you're not nurtured, if you're not touched, then you will not thrive. So they really need to be touched. They also can experience pain, no surprise there. And of course, that's what some of those reflexes are to take care of them instinctively. So, overall, adults have better hearing than infants. Adults can hear quiet sounds that infants can't. The best level that an infant can hear is a regular human voice. Just that. The low and high pitches they don't hear as well with that. Now, seeing, and we have touched on this in Intro to Psych, but when they're born, their seeing is not very good. It takes about 4 months. They see in black and white only. They do not see in color. Um, by 3 months, they end up with three kinds of cones, and you'll remember that the cones are for color and the rods are for twilight, black and white, peripheral vision. So by 3 months, they've got three kinds of cones and associated circuits start working, and they can start seeing a full range of color. And by about 4 months, they can see in color. And their visual acuity is not very good either. So you can be uh, an infant can't even see you. It's almost like 6 weeks before they can start to focus in. Um, if you recall from, again, from intro, because we did that one chapter on developing through a lifespan, um, babies are born with depth perception. Do you remember the test, the visual cliff, where they had the baby on the table and half the table was glass and the baby stopped when they got to the glass portion because of the fear of falling. And so there is depth perception. They're born with that. Um, and they also start to have fear. Uh, at 6 weeks, the heart slows down. By 7 months, the heart can accelerate with fear. Uh, so going across that visual cliff, they're showing fear. They're showing fear right there. So, but when the mom got on the other side of the table and coaxed the baby across, then the baby would go across. Um, so let's talk about self-awareness. Now, when do children realize that they exist? And you'll see the Rouge test. You can watch that. That's a video that's online. Um, about 18 to 24 months, they understand I and me. It is well established by the age of 2. When kids say mine, 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 it's not to be aggressive or selfish. It's a way of indicating ownership in the process of defining themselves. They're like, oh, this is mine. It's mine. My toy, my toy. Me. And when they talk about themselves, they talk about themselves by defining their features. I have blue eyes. I have curly hair. I have brown skin. I have a pretty dress. They don't think of themselves intrinsically, they think of themselves as their features. So that is very interesting. They also will say things like, I like green. I have good blue eyes. So they're describing themselves in their characteristics. And at this point, they are also establishing something called theory of mind. And this is when they start to see that people have thoughts and beliefs and intentions, and these cause people to behave in specific ways. So they are able to read another's mental states. So they can even understand that people's behavior is intentional with a goal. So that is really important. They're like, oh, where are the crackers? Well, they know that you have a behavior that has a goal. Where are the crackers? The crackers are in the cupboard. So this is a theory of mind, and it's a relationship between their mind and their behavior. So, at this point, we're going to end this chapter. There's a few more steps for you to do, and then you will have a study guide, and then you're going to take your quiz. And then next chapter, we're going to start from age 2 onward, and we're going to speak a lot about Jean Piaget. All right, thanks so much. Until next time.